Alright guys, we're going over the first Texans in 4th grade this week. One of the things that you need to know is that you can find this section starting on page 106 in your textbook. That is where you will find this information if you want to do one of the choose activities that requires it from the textbook. Your objectives. First of all, you want to be able to understand how the first Texans arrived. And second, you want to be able to compare and contrast two tribes and write about their experiences. You'll need your fill-in-the-blank notes, a pencil, and to ask your teacher where they want these notes turned in or how they want them turned in. Let's get started. The first Texans. An ice age is when huge sheets of ice and snow cover large amounts of the earth. When this happened, people could walk across a frozen bridge all the way from Asia to North America. The location of this bridge is called the Bering Strait. So over here you see Russia, and then you've got Alaska. They're really not that far apart, and the water between them is that place called the Bering Strait. During the Ice Age, this froze solid enough that people could walk from the land over in Russia to the land over in Alaska. And you can see how they would walk from Russia to Alaska, through Canada, and down here is California. And as you know, if you keep going to the east, you'll find Texas. So that is how the first people got over from Asia to North America. These people are called hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers gather plants and hunt animals for food. The descendants, or relatives, of these people became the first people to live in modern-day Texas. Archaeologists study the culture of ancient people. They do this by looking at the artifacts or ancient objects that they left behind. When we track different artifacts from the different tribes, we realize that they would trade resources with one another. So we might find an artifact from the Caddo tribe all the way over in the area where the Karankawa lived, and we would realize that they must have traded resources in order for that artifact to end up over there. Native Americans of Texas. There are several different tribes of Native Americans in Texas. Some of the major ones include the Caddo, the Karankawa, the Comanche, and the Lipan Apache. You can kind of see over here where the Apache were. The Pueblos usually were over here and kind of into New Mexico. On the Gulf were the Karankawas, and the Caddo lived along the rivers. The Caddo lived on settlements on the Red River. Their government was arranged as a confederacy, or a group of people who worked toward a common goal. The Caddo were farmers. They sowed corn, beans, and squash. Men would also travel to hunt buffalo, because they had to follow the buffalo around. They didn't stay in one spot. They used these for their meat and their protective hides. So over here you can see a picture, an illustration of what a Caddo village might look like. Their homes were shaped like cones and made of mud and dried grasses. You can see the layers of that going all the way up to the top, kind of like a beehive. Most Caddo people today live in Oklahoma after they were forced to leave East Texas. Another group was called the Karankawa. They lived along the Gulf of Mexico, so a different body of water, but they both live along water. I wonder why you would live along water. They were nomads, or people who travel based on the season or food. That means that they didn't build permanent homes and have farmland and cattle and stuff like that. They didn't stay in one spot for too long. During the summer, each group had their own leader, and they would move inland to hunt for deer and birds. In winter, they moved together into larger villages where they would share one chief. So, when it was easier to find food, they split off and found their own food. When it got harder in the winter, they came together and shared resources in larger villages. They traveled in dugout canoes. They would fish with nets or shoot fish with arrows. Now, dugout canoes are when you basically just take a giant tree or log and dig it out until it's in the shape of a canoe and you can hop in the water in it. Because they lived on the coast on the Gulf, they were the first to meet European explorers. That's why most of the Karankawa died out due to disease and their battles for land. So they don't really have a ton of living relatives, unlike the Caddo who now live in Oklahoma. I want you now to use your Venn diagram sheet on your notes page to compare and contrast the Caddo and the Karankawa. I used a couple different terms to tell you some things about them, but you can use your notes and see how they were different and how they were the same. Remember, on Venn diagrams, if it's all about the Caddo, you put it in that circle. All about the Karankawa, it goes in that circle. And if it's about both of them, you put it in the middle. When you're done with that, I want you to fill out your quick write. Imagine you're writing an email to a child your age in Texas 2,000 years ago. So that's a really long time. Explain how your life is different now. Use correct grammar, capitalization, and complete sentences. So you might tell this kid how instead of dugout canoes, you're driving cars or flying in planes. Instead of following buffalo to hunt, you can drive through McDonald's. There's lots of ways that your life is different than theirs. If you need to find more ways, check out the textbook. Remember, you can find all this information starting on page 106.